All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, we're at the Imp and the Ogre. My name's Paul.
Hey, it's Ryan.
Today we are talking about the Carnival of Tears.
Yeah, Carnival of Tears designed by Tim Hitchcock and Nicolas Logue. It's a adventure designed for 5th level PCs. It's a Pathfinder adventure, so basically a D20, 3rd edition D&D style game if you're not familiar with Pathfinder, and it's available on the Paizo website.
I think this is probably one of the most gruesome but also fun adventures that we've reviewed so far, or going to review.
It's the darkest. It's by far. This is. It's not very PG-13.
Not at all.
It's not. I don't. It's not overtly grotesque, but there is a lot of
horror themes in it.
It's mature themes.
Yeah,
for sure. It's definitely not for kids, I would say.
So one of the things I liked about this adventure from the get-go is that you can just do it anytime you want. It doesn't fit into a theme of a campaign. It just shows up anywhere you want it to, and you can run this adventure.
It's very plug and play. I did enjoy the fact that success in the adventure is based off of how many hundreds of townsfolk die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not about how many you save. It's about how many die.
How many didn't die?
How many didn't die, yeah.
I was just appalled when I was looking at the chart at the end of it. It's like, best case scenario, it's less than 100, and that's considered a win in this adventure. No deaths is not an option.
No, not even close. Yeah, there's no way that you can stop nobody from dying.
No, the people die before you even find out that there's people dying. Like it's pretty rough.
So,
and in general, I also really like the episodic nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no set plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can go check out a couple of different things and then check a bunch of other things. You don't have to do everything in this adventure, which I found kind of nice. Oh, yeah. I guess we should say what it's about. So there's a carnival, and the basic premise of this adventure is that dark, evil fae sort of take over this carnival and turn it from a fun winter fair into a carnival of horrors.
Massacre. So much like the Red-Handed Doom, this adventure runs on a point system, a hidden point system, which you liked, I guess, in the first one. And but instead of victory points, you're earning virtue points. And there is a queen of the fae kind of watching you guys from afar and determining whether or not you are resolute enough to defeat.
She's looking for heroes.
Exactly. So she's kind of seeing how you interact with the everyday folk and determining your virtue based off that.
Yeah, no, this adventure kind of assumes that your players are nice.
Yeah.
Not even virtuous, like nice
people. Yeah.
Like being indifferent and being like, I don't really care is not good enough. Like this is actually one of those adventures that could theoretically end up being a TPK just because your players never really figure out what's happening, get caught up in the whole thing, and end up getting thrown into a wood chipper.
Yeah.
Like, actually not even thrown into it, like walk into a wood chipper because you think it's a fun time.
Yeah.
Like it's,
yep.
It could literally end like the ending of Fargo. Like it could just be
awful. So part one is you're kind of just mulling about the carnival. It's got neat carnival things for you to do.
The adventure is basically split into 2 points. There's the light side and the dark side. It's a link to the past. So you can go around and check out the events and before anything bad happens. I can't remember the total number. There's like 8 attractions or something like that.
A bunch, yeah.
Of varying complexity, right? I think it's very much you outline what's happening, your players can say, let's go check out this.
And I think the neat thing about this, the two sides of the same coin, is that if you were creative enough and had a horror type mindset, you could create any type of carnival attraction and then twist it to whatever you want it to be afterwards. So if you wanted to use what they had in the adventure, great. They're all pretty cool and they flip neatly, but you could also think of your own things to throw in there as well.
Yeah, the freak show, I guess I kind of enjoy, just because a lot of it seems supernatural but isn't supernatural. Like there's just a lot of your standard geeks and freaks and professional carnies involved in it, but there's also enough sort of setting specific weirdness that is also enjoyable. Like there's a homunculus in a jar.
Yeah.
It's that you can accidentally like set free and then it runs amok.
Yeah.
Or the two-headed Etten that had his head decapitated, so it's a one-headed Etten.
He was my favorite, yeah.
That got a hag to reanimate his head, his brother's head, so he's got like a talking corpse head in a bag.
Yep.
That he goes around showing the kids.
And he'll fight with it if he needs to.
That was the one thing I did find a little weird, is the winter fair, as it were, has a lot of monsters that are just sort of like part of the fair, right?
Well, I guess like going back to the history of the fair is that the adventure is about the guy who runs the fair, the half elf, and his wife, who his soul has been captured by the Fae. So the whole point is to release the soul of his wife. So I guess they were very powerful adventurers that attracted some of these people.
Yeah,
like that's why the Minotaur is there. He was their adventuring buddy, had nothing better to do, so decided to hang out.
Yeah.
So maybe that's power attracts power. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of justification for it. I mean, I guess it also fits if you sort of run on the premise that an entire species isn't all just murderous monsters. But it's depending on how you've been running your campaign, it may not fit if your players aren't used to just not automatically attacking a monstrous monster on sight effectively.
You'd think that they would hopefully not just fight something that's a part of the carnival.
One would hope,
but then again they could, and that just bodes poorly for them in the end.
And sort of sticking with the dark theme, there's a lot of like assaults that are happening that the players can choose to get involved in, and depending on how you like to run your games, like there's no like graphicness to it. There's just a lot of implied violence. There's I don't need to really get into it, but you're basically not just once, twice in the light side of Carnival, the PCs can stumble upon basically sexual assaults.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And can choose to get involved, and it wasn't particularly palatable.
Yeah.
To me, like I was like, there's. So it may not fit themes that you'd want to have in your adventure. Like this is one of those things that like specific.
Sure.
Like these are discussions that you need to have. Like I don't know if I'd run this adventure like at a convention as an open table.
Right.
Like everyone just come and sit. We're gonna have a fun time, and there's a sexual assault, and like another thing, a child's getting sucked into a wood chipper, and you might save them.
Yeah.
Right? So in the, before things get bad, you're stopping assaults and preventing kids from getting pulled into wood chippers.
If you choose to help.
If you even choose to go to those events.
That's
right?
true.
Like there's no reason for your adventurers to even go into the marvels of technology.
I guess you'd learn a lot about the people that are playing the game, about how they run their fantasy characters.
Yeah, but I don't know, for some of that stuff, I don't know that I'd want to just drop it onto the table without warning.
There's you could do other things that just make it a little. You could change them easily to not just have it in there that way.
Yeah,
right.
It doesn't have. I mean, I think the appeal of this particular adventure is how dark and gruesome it is. Right? It is definitely more on the horror spectrum of an adventure, which makes it refreshing because I don't find that a lot of published adventures fit into that sort of genre, if you will.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel that tonally this isn't going to be a good fit for everybody.
No. Yeah.
Right? So I think you need to have a good idea of what your players like, or you have a discussion with the players before you run it. You say, like, I have this adventure. It's a lot darker than what we're used to, which is really funny when you're talking about a game where you're just routinely, like, murdering everybody that you encounter. But thematically, like, most of the time, that's not just happening to townsfolk.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
This is an adventure where townsfolk are going to die.
Yeah.
Awfully.
Yeah.
Like, not in, like, fun sort of, like, they all got turned into kittens and got eaten by the purple people eater, right? Like, no, it's they are gonna die awfully. It's not quite a Saw movie, but it's
close to...
it's not far off of it. So that's kind of the main caveat I sort of have with this particular adventure, is it isn't going to be for everybody, and it's not going to be appropriate in all campaigns.
That's a fair disclaimer, I'd say.
What else? Sticking with the light side before we get on to anything you wanted to mention specifically. I had a couple other things, but
the Minotaur, he goes on a rampage in the light side, so he's the Carnival strongman. That was an ex-adventuring party of the people that run it. Eventually, he just gets bored, effectively.
Well, he gets recruited by the Fae, but doesn't gets tired of waiting for like the switch to get flipped.
So he just runs into the ice maze that's there, and
conveniently, Minotaur in a maze, right?
Kills everything that's in it, essentially. So in the light side, you have the chance to go and kill him before. Well, you hear a scream that happens.
Well, everybody hears the scream,
but most people just play it off because it's the carnival. So if you choose to go and investigate, you can go kill the Minotaur before the light switch is turned off.
Yeah. I think there's two other two encounters that I kind of want to mention. One I think is required. It's the encounter where you meet, quote unquote, the carnival master,
the sword dancer,
right? The shadow dancer, I think his actual class. His name's Namdrin Quinn. So randomly he just puts on like a shadow dance. You see him twirl around with his awesome swords, and then he does his thing and looks all cool doing it, and doesn't actually really say anything. I noted it as a random display of his awesomeness. And
it is awesome. His swords are very cool.
Yeah, no, like as a NPC adventurer, he's a cool character. But I think the point of including this, and why it should be included regardless of what your players do, is that it should suggest to the players that this is a competent person and incentivize them to seek him out in when things go south, effectively, because he plays a big role of it. That's kind of one of the things I found while reading the adventure. A lot of the background comes through exposition, so you kind of need the players to meet the right people to get the right information, so it makes sense. Even still, like, lots of the stuff that was written is more just for the DM's interest than anything that plays a role in the adventure.
I think that the point of this adventure was to actually like experience the gruesome. I don't like the adventure pathway. The things you're supposed to do are kind of handed to you in a way, right? Like, you don't really need to go seeking things. They're found out in the open quite easily, like the soul vessel for the wife. You know, it's around on a neck of a guy who's just running around the carnival.
Well, if you even catch him,
right. But there's like there's a fail safe, because as soon as he runs on the lake, he slips and falls.
Yes,
right. So you catch him
eventually
already, but it leads you through everything that's in the carnival that's bad. So,
well, a certain number of them. I don't remember how many.
A bunch, enough.
There's a number of there's a timer, if you will.
Yeah. So mechanically, your players are going to do everything that they need to do to succeed, air quotes, in the adventure. But yeah, I thought he was a cool character as well.
One thing I really didn't like from a design standpoint in the light side carnival, if you will, was the Gypsy Tent. Not that there's a Gypsy Tent, going to get your fortune read, yada, yada, yada. But if players choose to go there, they can basically have a contingency spell cast on them with, like, an assortment of random spells. I can't remember what the list was. So for 100 gold, they can get that. And regardless of what they do in the tent, the Gypsy gives them a wand of Shatter as just like, I need this to help you, right? So if the PCs go to get their fortunes told, they get an item which the average adventuring party is not going to have a wand of Shatter. Like, it's not something that you routinely memorize as a spellcaster. I'm not even sure if it's still in 5th edition. This is effectively a 3rd edition adventure, because you normally just use it to break like items, and most players don't prepare to break items on their daily adventuring rounds. No, right? But as we'll talk about, the big bad boss of the adventure is weak against Shatter. So if you get the Gypsy's wand, your players are way more better equipped to be able to actually win, because the boss is quite challenging, I found. And there's no guarantee that the players would have any reason to go in there, because there's a million things to do. Like, I didn't even write them all down, because they could participate in feats of strength and take sleigh rides and do archery. Like, there's skill challenges where they can win Cupid dolls and whatnot, right? So I think
like you want your players to do enough things to win dolls, because they come into effect later on in the adventure.
Well, if you choose, right? Like, I think the way it's written, I think the sidebar basically says that as the fair progresses, the dolls get replaced with like curse dolls that give you penalties, like -1 to attack and things like that. But it's really up to the DM to decide if you want that to happen, because realistically, like, how many Cupid dolls are your PCs going to accumulate?
Well, it carries on until you just decide that enough is enough, right? Like, you just create the segue into the next part whenever you feel like your players have done enough.
I wrote basically once the PCs get bored is when you move to the next
when
part.
they look at each other and go, well, what should we do? Then you can go, aha, so-and-so contacts you.
If they've proven to be good people, right? So if they've actually, followed up on the screams and investigated the cries for help behind the tents, or there's a bunch of other paid for some street urchins to get tickets to the fair. Like, there's a ton of them in there, and most aren't worth that many virtue points. I think if you actually kill the Minotaur, it's like a guaranteed you're a good guy type of thing. And I think that was basically included in there, that even if your players are not nice people, they're probably bored enough by the end that they'll go check out screams in case it actually is something to get all stabby on. And I'm pretty sure, I didn't write down the specific number here, but I'm pretty sure that the Minotaur in and of itself is sufficient to get recognized as a competent, caring adventurer. Regardless, though, once you decide that it's time to kick things up a notch, a wolf comes to the PCs carrying, Fox, I think it is. Yeah, wolf's a little too scary. Although Fox comes up
with
a note, inviting the PCs to come and talk to some rando.
Yeah, queen of the whatever on the edge of the place where they've been watching.
So a good Fey queen.
So you go talk to the Fey queen. She gives you a narrative on what they're doing there, and they're trying to stop the ice, whatever, from coming down.
Well, I think, so it's a big exposition dump.
Yeah.
And this is where the PCs find out that they find out the background. So I think that if they care enough, once again, like, it really depends on your PCs if they care about the narrative. But this is where they find out that the Quinn guy, the Shadow Dancer, has made a deal with the evil Fae, basically exchanging the entire town for his wife that was captured by like an ice witch or something like that. And she wants you to stop that from happening, because wanton murder is bad, not surprisingly. So the main sort of switch, the shift from light side to dark side, which you find out from the what's her name, Sintira, I wrote it down, so the good Fae Queen, is that there's this magic item that, what's it called? The Eye of Rapture. So basically it creates a magical effect that fills people with euphoria and lets them see only what they want to see.
So they can be murdered without knowing about it.
Without knowing about it, exactly. So they see the happy, fun carnival, even while people are like getting thrown into the wood chipper and all the type of stuff. Now, if the PCs get recruited by the good queen, she gives them, I no longer recall, a potion of something
or another
to help them resist this effect, which allows them to now go into the fair and deal with all of the consequences of going on in there.
Yeah.
Now, assuming that doesn't happen, if your PCs are all, not nice, they're the murderest of murder hobos, and they're like kicking the orphan kids and all of that type of stuff, then effectively what happens is they fall under the spell of the Eye of Rapture, and they think it's a boring fair ongoing while the wood chipping and other horrors,
ice carving,
and we'll get to that, are ongoing. There is a rule in there that basically allows the PCs to take a will save if they take damage. So once you fall into the wood chipper, you get a roll to see if you realize you're in a wood chipper, but at that point I don't know how much it would matter.
Yep.
So again, it's kind of hilarious to have your players just not real going on and buy that. But from a fun factor, you kind of hope that your players are nice enough PCs to actually progress the adventure.
Right. So, yeah, hopefully that happens and you just don't die, because that'd be kind of mean and cruel, but also sort of like a little bit funny at the same time.
The funny thing is, like, your players would talk about that time they all, got led to the slaughter more than they'll talk about the adventure of, that time we won.
Exactly, yeah.
But that's just me.
So once the badness has started, there's sort of like gated events that I guess happen, and if you go interrupt 3 of the things...
6, actually.
3 and then 6.
Oh, there's the gated things. I see what you mean.
So the first, you go stop 3 of these terrible events from happening, and this little guy named Prig shows...
He's a quick lane rogue.
Yeah, shows up and he is taunting you and runs from you, and then the point is to chase him through these events, and he's wearing the necklace that hosts the soul of the husband's wife. And then if you stop 6 events, then the big baddie comes.
Yes.
I guess we could talk briefly about like what the events have turned into.
Yeah, I didn't write down every single one, but there's some pretty cool ones they're definitely fun to talk about. So
I've got some to make mention of as well. I thought the coolest part would be like the start of it all at the ticket booth, the place where you can get tickets.
No.
The tickets on the wall have been replaced by the stretched faces of dead townsfolk and pinned to the wall in like gruesome smiles.
Awful. There's literally nothing that's like, oh, that's cute. It's like, no, it's
bad. Yeah,
it's Hellraiser, man.
The wheel of strength, where you could spin the wheel. I guess
it's like a windmill that they converted to spin the thing.
Yeah, it'd be like Price is Right wheel.
Yeah,
that you'd spin, but they've rejigged the inner gearings of it so that when you spin the wheel, it dismembers and delimbs.
You basically draw
William Wallace.
Yeah, you draw and quarter somebody. So every time it gets spun, somebody dies. The ice carving. The ice carving's so dark. So basically, in the light side, there's an ice carving competition. So big blocks of ice, and the townsfolk try to carve cool things. The change is that there are people frozen inside the blocks of ice. So you're carving not just a block of ice, you're carving frozen corpses in blocks of ice, and that's so gross.
That one's awful. I did enjoy the brew hall How that all the beer's been replaced by a drink that starts turning the people that drink it into trees.
That one's intense because even if there's no cure to that.
Yeah.
Those people are effectively dead. They're just trees now. And I think there's like crazed lumberjacks like chopping down the trees in there too.
But what I thought was cool that if like a PC ends up getting turned into a tree, they can, I think, like greater restore
or limited wish or something like
can turn them back into their PC. But if they remain a tree for too long, they like hatch into a dryad eventually. So I was like, man, that's kind of neat.
Yeah. The sawmill is just basically a sawmill where people are getting led into all the machinery. Like, what's super gruesome about all of these things is it literally tells you how many people die per hour.
Yeah, and it's not like an insignificant amount per hour. It's like, 40 an hour, 50 an hour, 60 an hour. So if you're not interrupting this, the idea is that the DM's keeping track of time and counting.
That is one thing I thought was a little complicated, is like, how would you actually track time in it? I mean, there's some more events that I want to mention because they're gross, but how do you actually go about
deciding how long
it's actually been, like how much time is spent? Because if you do it like as rules per written, like 3 rounds of combat's 18 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't make conceptual sense that's that quick. You know, they could run through and kill everything in there in 5 minutes.
So I guess, like, maybe what you would do is if they all got the potions and could see what was going on, then it wouldn't be such, you would assume that it would end fairly quickly, I guess. If, however, you didn't get the potions and you were, like, still participating, then I think you would probably, time would go by more quickly, so to speak, or they would spend more time because they would have to go to these places to get hurt, right? So you could maybe just ask, like, how long do you spend at the archery?
Yeah,
right? Like, and then you'd be like, I don't know, maybe an hour. And you go, okay. Like, tick mark, or like, how long do you go, like, how long do you spend spinning the wheel for? Right? So I guess that would just be like an arbitrary thing that you'd have to keep track of because, time progresses slowly in the sense of combat.
Yeah, I didn't actually calculate, like, how many people can die an hour.
Well, I don't think there was a
total
maximum. It was just each place.
Yeah, no, but like if you add it all up, how many people die in a given amount of time? Mostly just because, like,
at least a couple hundred.
Yeah, probably actually. So, so the question becomes, like, how quickly can you? I guess it assumes that if you just do everything immediately, you'll be under that 100.
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, that's the whole thing, is because it's the victory scale.
Yeah.
So if it's under 100, that's victory.
Like, I think I recall, like, the maze doing maybe like 10 an hour unless the Minotaur stopped.
I think, like, the worst ones are like 40 an hour. 40
was like the lumber mill an hour, and I think maybe there was a 60 an hour for something. So I would say you're probably close to like at least 100 to 200 people an hour dying.
Yeah.
Which seem more likely that you'd be into the like 400 to 600 people killed. Yeah. For the victory points in the end.
But, well, the minimum's not 0 because people are dying like immediately.
Yeah.
But the maximum's 700, right? So I guess if I really wanted to, I could go look and say, how long is this fair supposed to last? Because it ends with a firework display at the end of the night, and if 700 is the maximum, well, then how long is
I guess right?
But I mean, realistically, it shouldn't go over 100. But
what do you do? Like, there has to be a point that the Fae arrive regardless, right? That it flips from being good from bad anyway. So if you'd almost have to set a time limit on the beginning good part, and say you have a certain amount of time to reach your victory points where the Queen contacts you or not. Because if you don't track that, then you can't have like unsupervised slaughter, I guess. Like, how long could you go on participating in the fair before you yourself got hurt and realized something was going on? Right? Like, is it when the sun goes down, or
don't know?
Like, do you give them all day just to get enough victory points, or at what point you're like, all right, you've messed around long enough, and now it's bad and you haven't made any of your saves?
I think I think if I was running this, I haven't actually run this particular one, is that the switch would probably happen when the PCs get called to the Good Fate Queen is probably how I would do it. So she basically.
But what if they don't?
If they don't, well, they're just going to lose, man. I literally don't think that. I don't know how.
Like it's an auto loss if they don't have enough virtue. Like you'd assume it just would be, right?
Because, it kind of feels that way, to be honest. That if you don't by the Good Fate Queen, it's an auto loss.
Because if you're all under the spell and you go, let's go grab a drink.
It could be it.
You're all trees.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. So I guess that's like you're either good or you're bad at the end of the day.
Right? So that's what kind of makes it. There's some of those aspects in there. And again, like, is that fair to your PCs to let them know that if, you're jerks, you're just gonna like die? I mean, this is a good adventure to eliminate your jerky PC party that you don't like. Like it feels a little punitive if you do that, because let's say they don't get recruited and they're in the Dark Fae and blah 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 blah, and one of them actually does take damage.
Yeah.
At what? From what? It depends on what they do.
Well, there's nothing that just does a bit of damage.
It's true, but there's also nothing that I can't remember if there was anything in place that would have precluded the PCs from just being like, all right, this is boring, we're gonna go. Mm-hmm. We're gonna go back to the tavern, and you just wake up in the morning and just like there's just dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a more reasonable outcome if they don't get recruited, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I could, and to a certain extent, from like a campaign standpoint, having your PCs wake up in their, in their inn covered in blood with no memory of how come they're covered with blood, mm-hmm. and then go out to the carnival's just a slaughter, and they don't know what happened. They're like, everything was fine when we left. What's going from a.
And the carnival's gone.
Because Quinn's going to take off, right?
Yeah.
So take his wife and disappear, like with all these dead bodies.
Well, you would have never gotten to that point. You wouldn't have freed his wife, right? He would have packed up the carnival and gone somewhere else, because that was his accord, wasn't it?
His accord was he would get his wife back,
but they've duped him, right?
Oh,
that's why they've tricked him, right? Like he's not getting the soul back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's why he's like that. The shell of himself.
Oh, despondent. He sold his soul and he's not getting anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Back from it, anyways. Yeah, that makes more sense. But I think that'd just be hilarious. I mean, hilarious, big air quotes around that slaughtered village. But
it would be fun, like if that was the case, if you did go back to the inn and you woke up the next day and the carnival's gone and it's just replaced with dead bodies.
And you're covered in blood because you were walking through this slaughter.
Your PCs would want to go find the carnival again.
Yeah.
And then it's the repeat, It's like Groundhog Day. Like, what do you want to go do? Like, you see these events happen. Do they choose to do it again? Like, what if this happened multiple times before they figure it out?
I think it's unlikely that it would happen multiple times before they figured it out, but I think that's an interesting way of playing it, and I think that's a better way to play out your jerk PCs that's less punitive, right? Like the alternative is they all die.
Yeah.
And they all die because they're... I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing as PCs that are jerks. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be a nice character to be a hero.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Like, you can be completely self-interested and what have you, right? I mean, alternatively, you could be like, there's a carnival in town. That could be like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
well, then you just carry on with the next thing, right?
I'm going to work on crafting, know. And then you can spin it off, right? I don't know how you'd build off of then the town's just everyone's dead. You'd have to make a whole adventure around that, I guess, but I don't know that you could because there's
this
no
is
recourse.
Like a have this prepped in the back of your pocket adventure, and then you could just always kind of just throw the carnival's in town again. You guys want to go? Like just always as an option to run. We just finished slaying the thing. You get back to town, the carnival's setting up. Just always as the red herring off on the side, like.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. I think it's definitely more of a insert as needed type of adventure, and I like it too as it sort of self-contains, because you could just throw this in here and you're level 5 when you start it, and you make it through, you actually complete the adventure, you're level 6, right? Like it's nice, it's concise, it's not some giant dungeon crawl or something like that where they expect you to level up in the middle of the dungeon. It's like, I killed an orc and now I suddenly can cast more spells. So I like it from a structural standpoint, like it's plug and playness, but it does become more problematic if your players don't get recruited, don't get immunity to the magical effects, and then try to, basically they don't do anything. But that's sort of enough of that tangent.
Going back to the things that I liked about the evil thing, the pie eating contest.
Oh, the Swinomancer.
So there's the Swinomancer.
I loved it just for the word Swinomancer. I think there needs to be more Swinomancers.
So if you were under the illusion of the Fae, what you see is like a very happy fat chef and a pie eating contest going. If you're not, you see the Swinomancer, who's like a large pig man.
Anthropomorphic pig man.
But he's got this big machine that stuffs pies full of guts.
Trails,
And if you end up getting in a combat encounter with him, he's got a special ability where he can spray guts on you. Pretty cool.
Yeah, a big pump gun. And if you win the pie eating contest, you get turned into a pig.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I just, the word Swinomancer in general just won it over for me. What else? I liked the Peep Show, where the exotic dancer is a nymph, so everyone gets turned blind from looking at the nymph and then slaughtered by redcaps or whatever. So, again, like, it's super unforgiving.
Yeah.
I mean, even just fighting a nymph in general, and I think the nymph is like the sister of the Fae Queen that you were just talking to, so it's all kind of convoluted, the politicking that's going on in the Fae world, if you will. But that's one of those things that, like, if your players just go into the Peep Show to find out if there's any danger in there, boom, blinded.
I guess there's a lot of opportunity for them to not
There's no reason for them to go in there. Like, they don't have to.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, if someone did go in and they're like, okay, guys, I'm blind now, maybe that would be enough to be like, okay, maybe we should just leave.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's not go get a drink at the thing, or,
Yeah, so, I mean, that is why they don't have to do all of them. I think that's also why when the Quickling shows up after they've, disrupted 3, it doesn't lead them to all of them. It leads them to the ones that are I don't know if they're like the safest, but they're the more easily resolved.
Right.
Anything else I wanted to mention? Oh, the Sleigh Rides. Speaking of dark, the Sleigh Rides again, where I'm just like,
well, that's where they were capturing people to get put into the ice blocks.
I know, but it's like, who takes the Sleigh Rides? Mostly kids.
Yep.
Right. So. And then, like, the old, the guy who was running it, they just tie like, his corpse underneath the wagon, so you're just dragging this body behind. I'm like, I'm all for maybe the occasional horror theme, but there's definitely a certain level of grotesquerie in this adventure that, I don't know, it might be a bit much even for my tastes.
It's not for the faint of heart, for sure. This is a run on Halloween night type adventure.
Yeah, I think
the once in a while, like, doing something different, because the more you talk about it out loud, the more you realize that it's not, like, easy.
No, it's not easy. It's not something that you'd easily shake off. Like if you think about a character that actually experienced all of this, like, it's not the cleanup afterwards, right? I mean, that's not something that normally, it sort of as an interesting aside, though, it's not something you normally think about too much in your adventuring, is like, what happens after you've gone through and killed all of the goblins in the cave.
The poor other weeping goblins are cleaning up their dead friends and family.
Yeah, presumably. Or just bloating and rotting in the sun, right? Like, it's all the ditch digging and grave digging and all of that stuff that happens following a conflict isn't something that you ever really want to think about.
And it does talk about that in the conclusion of it, that like depending on how many people die, the town either recovers from it or doesn't, right?
Oh yeah, and it would surely make sense. Like if enough people in a community die, like the community is just not going to recover all the bread earners, or people just leave because it's just too bad of memories. So, I mean, the way it's supposed to progress here is that you do eventually catch the Quickling. I guess almost guaranteed only when it slips on the ice. Because Quicklings are permanently hasted, have improved invisibility at will. So the PCs can't even see him unless he wants to be seen, and he could just constantly be backstabbing them the entire time. If he was actually more dedicated into trying to kill the PCs than just to mess with them, it would probably be a lot more problematic. But you defeat the Quickling, you get can't even remember what it's called, like an ice shard, witch ice or something like that. That contains the soul of Quinn's wife, and if Quinn gets his wife's soul back, he revives her and he joins you. So he's a very powerful NPC, and depending on the type of party you have, you might need him. And by type of party, I mean like how optimized and all of combat oriented your party is. Just because the boss is difficult, and more so just because the terrain, which is one thing I did
on ice.
I really did enjoy the structure of the encounter, that you're fighting them on the frozen river, and there's hazards. I'm always a fan
of like environmental hazards in combat. There's thin ice that you can fall through, and you have to make saves to be able to get out or swim against the current.
And traction. Like it's all basically difficult terrain, and you got to make deck saves so you don't go A over T and fall constantly. None of which actually affect the boss. And the boss, I guess we can talk about him briefly. It's a cold rider, which is, I don't know, just a powerful fae. I don't think it's intended to be a unique fae, just a scary type of fae. And he rides
the chosen of the queen, that I can't remember what it said in the lore of it. They ripped out the hearts of fae and replaced them with something else, and they have an undying love towards her.
So basically he's mounted on a stag who isn't affected by the ice whatsoever. He heals. He's got regeneration when he's on the ice. He's got ice armor, which causes a bunch of damage resistance.
It's got living antlers.
Yeah.
That attack at will.
Yeah, so it can do a lot of damage. You can do basically charge attacks and just keep ripping, like run by back and forth. It's got a glaive that does dexterity damage. Did I write that down? Yeah, it does dexterity damage. So it means basically you're going to become more likely to fall and not be able to do it every time you get hit by his charges. So it's, if the PCs don't make an effort to basically change the structure of the fight, right? Like refuse to fight him on the ice, attack him from range, use fire-based spells.
Because he's intentionally fighting on the ice as well. He knows that he's stronger there.
Oh yeah, he's way
doing it on
stronger.
Purpose.
Way stronger on the ice than he is outside of that. So if they fight him on his terms or its terms, I don't really. It's a weird fate thing. They're probably gonna lose. Like even just as a single fight, like it seems hard, right? And once again, like if you have access to Shatter, you can wreck his armor, like reduce his armor class. I wrote it down somewhere. Like every time you use Shatter on this enemy, its armor class goes down by 2, and you can do it multiple times. Though his armor is tied to his hit points, though, so it's the ability that he has. So as he gets weaker, he gets easier to kill, but Shatter does like 3d6 damage to him and reduces his armor class. And if you have that wand, you can just have your wizard or rogue or bard just bam, 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 non-stop.
I think like what I liked about this adventure as well, overall, there's no there's no point of it. Like there's no point for your players to be like, yeah, we have to go kill this guy, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to chase this thing. Like they only chase it if that little guy Prig's defeated. The dude just shows up to take the necklace because he knows he has it.
Yeah.
Right? So he just appears, but there's no incentive to carry on, So there's at any point your PCs could just be like, nope, not doing that, not going on the ice, don't care.
Yeah.
We're out of here.
Yeah.
So it just
don't know these people.
Yeah, why did this guy? Okay, his wife just popped out of this thing. Like we knew the queen told us that, but there's no investment. You're not invested whatsoever in any of it.
And there's no reward.
There is none, right? There's no reward of treasure. You don't know how awesome that guy's swords are, so you'd never want to try and just take those from him.
That's true. You'd have no reason to know that. Conversely, though, like what's nice about it is because it's not tied to anything. You could make it anything you wanted it to be, right? Like you could have
Curse of the Werewolves.
Well, you could just have this be a thing that happens, right? Like the PCs could hear about a village that was massacred, and they could hear about another village that was massacred, and nobody, they go and investigate, and they just find out that there was a carnival. And maybe not every village that has the carnival this happens. Maybe it only happens on specific times or specific people, or maybe it's a curse that they have and they're trying to eliminate certain things. Like you could build more of a narrative in it, and I think I would do that in my own type of campaign, right? Like I'd want it to fit more in there. And what's nice about it is you could just run it as a standalone. It's Halloween. Let's play a gross adventure, or you could make it part of an ongoing campaign. Like maybe this is all due to some MacGuffin that the ringmaster has. Yeah. Right. Then you need to recover that aspect to do that, and to do that, you need to go and blah 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 and deal with the whole adventure, and then you need the blood of a cold rider or whatever, right? Like you have some actual reason that the players need to be there, because I fully agree with what you're saying there. There's nothing to stop the players from just walking away. Yep. From just being, I'm not invested in this whatsoever, right? And they're not, because there's no reason for them to continue on other than we're playing D&D and I want to keep playing D&D.
But these types of adventures, I think, are good tools to have in the back, because there's always that, like, maybe they don't want to do the next thing that's part of your big campaign. And at the end of this adventure, whether your degree of failure, you could set up to have interesting recurring characters come back and make some enemies along the way as well. Like there's, I think, the half-orc brawler who's part of...
Well, I think the adventure itself, I think, is part of like a bunch of adventure. It's a series, so you can go from module to module in the same area, effectively. But talking about the NPCs just reminded me how depressing it is at the end, right? Like, let's assume that you just go through and you're awesome and you save as many people as you can and you defeat the cold rider and thumbs up, high fives. Yeah, everyone's sad because a couple people went in the wood chipper, but overall, Fargo perseveres. But, what happens is that
his wife doesn't like him.
leaves him because she's so appalled by what he did. And literally...
No, it's his weak will.
Oh, his weak will? Is that what it was?
Yeah, his weak will, that he allowed himself to become a pawn of the Fae, that she just leaves him anyway.
And it even says that, like, maybe she hooks up with one of the PCs. And I'm like, okay,
But she's a cruel and demanding queen or whatever.
Yeah. She's lawful neutral or something like that. And then she ends up being, like, gets involved with the... militia or something like that, but then he gets super depressed and becomes a drunk and basically gets basically two things happen. Either you end up if you had killed the
brothel master,
which it might have happened earlier on, depending on whether or not PCs care about violence against women effectively. If you remove this crime lord, Quinn ends up becoming the new crime lord,
or just a drunk,
Like it's not happy endings for anybody.
Nope.
So it's kind of depressing. It's one of those things like it's an adventure where when the PCs win, they don't really win. Like
that's I wrote that down, was that this like there's not a it's just measuring a degree of failure.
Yeah,
and like maybe your PCs don't care, and no, we didn't, like everyone would have died if we didn't show up anyway.
Yeah.
So
it's really can't overemphasize that this is kind of grimdark. You know, like it's about how well we didn't lose. You know, it's not about how well we won. It's mitigating failure, more than anything else.
But again, I think at the end of the day, if your players didn't go to the carnival, everybody would have died.
Yeah.
So they won anyway because they prevented some loss.
Well, they saved 600 and some odd people from dying.
Yeah. So they can't feel that bad about not winning because they were never realized they were in a game anyway.
It's true, but I mean, I think it's one of those situations where it would be more satisfying if the players knew the consequences of failure, right? Like if this was a traveling carnival, or if they knew that every like if it was a Fey-ish carnival in general, or these Fey, or maybe it's not the carnival itself specifically, maybe the Fey always target a carnival due to certain reasons, and it's always in this certain area, certain time of year or something like that. If there's more indication, I think, to the players of how awful it could be, then it might be more satisfying on the back end when they do prevent it from happening. Alternatively, you just sort of ramp up the carnage so the players are in the midst of the carnage and they can see how awful it is immediately, and are hyper incentivized to stop it. So I think that's the other way you go, is you don't sort of make it, then you go and they need to actually be witnessing the horror on, like, they're on the hill, they see everything, and then it just like, oh my goodness, what do we do first? Right. Like if
that would be a good like precursor, that if you set that up as just a narrative, that returning to town they see a slaughter at some point of a traveling carnival, and then you can plant the carnival again later, and maybe it'll trigger something along the way. That could be cool.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, now that I'm just thinking about it here, I definitely think they need to see it all happening, and you need to impart, like, you got to kind of describe a lot of this is going on, and really impart on them to try to think about what the worst thing could be. Like if you did this properly and they investigated enough stuff, they probably have a good idea that maybe all of those horrible machines in the sawmill tent might be a good place to start. You know what I mean? Like if they investigate enough stuff, and I think you should encourage that type of, like, time is of the essence, body parts and blood are everywhere, what do you do first? Like, even if it doesn't actually have any materialistic sort of consequences on the outcome, I think if you can impart that sense of urgency on your players, that might sort of promote the sense of success, right? Like, we stopped this one and we knew it was really bad, and then we stopped that one and, like, it was bad, but it could have been a lot worse, right? Like, I think you need to do a little bit of work as the DM to sort of help them feel that in the end, because they don't really, it's not like we got a bunch of magic items or anything super cool. True. Like, or at the end, you just have everyone be like, thank goodness you were here. Imagine how bad it would have been if you weren't here. Maybe have like a ceremony where they, get a medal or something like that to really play up that aspect of it. Because this is one of those situations where, like, they're heroes because they stopped the atrocity, or stopped it from being worse than it actually was, type of thing. It's the saving people from the burning building versus stopping the building from burning in the first place type of thing.
All very interesting things to think about.
Yeah. Anyways, I think I'm about talked out regarding this particular one. It's super dark. It suits particular tastes. If you're interested in a mature horror-themed adventure, I would recommend it, but it definitely doesn't really fit the normal tone, I would say, for most
definitely not.
D&D-esque style adventures.
For sure. Thanks for listening, guys. Next week, we're going to tackle the Bastion of Broken Souls. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.